You are now listening to Being Unboxed with Renee Ambush, formerly with the Flex Radio and now with D.O.D Radio Network, Destiny Over Drama. Best self, best life, best radio. Say that. Listen, it is once again, you are with Renee Ambush, now with D.O.D Radio Network. And I'm so excited to have my guest today being unboxed. Listen, y'all know I got a story for everything, right? And this lady doesn't even know. I followed her on IG. And the crazy thing about it is she was saying what I wanted to say, and I just wasn't saying it. And I didn't realize how bad and how much I needed to hear what she was saying. And I didn't realize how much bondage I was in to my own self and into parenting. And I have been navigating this thing for a long time. And, being a therapist myself, I'm just going to be transparent as I always am. It was a little challenging because I was like, I haven't found anyone who's really understanding what I'm navigating through with my parenting. Why? Because I was always giving somebody else some information. I was always giving somebody else their suggestions and their strategies and their solutions. And yet I sat in my own silence about the things that I was experiencing as a parent to older children. Now, what I realized, and I said children, however, what I had to realize was that you don't parent adults. Now I have to, and I'm like, and that was one of my biggest mistakes. I was still trying to parent adults. No, what you do is you support and you help navigate. But in the midst of me still parenting adults, I got caught up in some trauma, y'all. So when I would see them IGs coming across, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I want to say. That's what I want to say. But I don't know if I want to say it. And then her last post, well, it's not her last post because I love that she posts frequently. But one of the ones that I used for the promo was that people mad at her. And listen, if we just think about it, I was like, I didn't want people to be mad at me. Y'all know I keep it one. People to be mad at me. And in those toxic relationships with my children, I didn't want them to be mad at me. But I had to sit and realize, wait a minute, toxic, bondage, healing, whole. Alex, I'm gonna take healing and whole for the win. And so today's guest, she's a winner, y'all, and she's a winner for me, so I know she's going to be a winner for you. Miss Kendall Williams, and she's known as Mom's True Tea Baby. And guess what? She going to spill it. She ain't no tea for the fever. It's going to be tea all day. She dishing it out, and she already said they don't like us. So, baby, say what you're going to have to say or want to say today.
Okay.
Listen, Kendall, thank you, first of all, because you're reachable. Right?
Thank you for having me.
A lot of people on these platforms, you inbox them because you really want to have them on the show. You really are feeling their content. You know that it's impactful and it's making a difference, and they don't get back to you.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? You stay in their inbox or their info or send me, $2, $10, $15. And so to make yourself accessible and available, I really want to thank you, ma'am.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much for reaching out to me. I still walk in humility.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what's missing with some people. Like you said, they're untouchable.
Yeah.
And therefore they don't walk in humility. I feel like we're all on the same level. Doesn't matter what our status is. And that's never going to change with me. So thank you for reaching out to me. I'm truly grateful.
And then we also say that, for me anyway, you're a pioneer, because it wasn't until I seen Mom's Tea on IG that now everybody's, and it's good, but now I'm seeing all this stuff about, the parents and challenge and estranged relationships and healing. And I was like, baby, Mom was the first one I seen. So you started my news feed of others, but it made me realize how many of us are out there.
Yeah.
You have a voice for. You're speaking for a lot of people. And in doing so, I know we had a little conversation. We, as we continue down this conversation, we had a little bit of conversation. And I remember I told you I wanted to come for somebody in your comments because they were like, well, I mean, are you a therapist? And, like, who are you to be giving information out? Um,
Mhm.
if you don't mind, just tell us, because guess what? As we came to the conclusion, just because I do therapeutic services, doesn't mean, as you can see, doesn't mean that I don't experience these things, right?
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
don't need to be a therapist. It's most of the time, if you've experienced it
Mhm.
and you've come out of the trenches
Mhm.
and you still in your right mind,
Mhm.
learned many lessons, then
Mhm.
really you're obligated to go back to help other people to come out
Yeah.
of the trenches as well. So tell me, how did you get here? How did we get Mom T, girl?
So Mom Shruti was actually something that I had in my iPhone probably since 2019.
Mhm.
And I have been going through a lot with my younger son. And I was a single mom. I have two sons, two adult children, 29 and 34. So I always like to make that clear because a lot of times people, they're loud to respond, but they're very quiet with comprehension.
Come on now.
So my sons are adults. They whole grown boys, 29 and 34.
Mhm.
And I came up with this idea over, like I said, in 2019, because I was going through so much with my younger son
Mhm.
after his dad and I divorced. I've always been a truth teller,
Mhm.
always. And I've never shied away from conversations about what I was dealing with as a mom,
Mhm.
even if I felt like I was being judged amongst my girlfriends or peers because either they didn't have children or they had children very, very small, and my sons were already teenagers. So sometimes people can't relate when they're not on the same level as you. But
Mhm.
motherhood is not linear, it's very diverse. But again, I've always prided myself on being a truth teller, very authentic and unapologetically authentic. So I went ahead and pushed the button on Mom's Truth Tea. Actually, my husband was like, it's time for your story to be told. Um,
It's crazy because your story was not only just your story, but it allows other people to tell their stories and to, like you said, which I believe is your platform's, your a foundation of your platform, is
yeah.
really being able to be free from the
Hmm.
entanglements that we connect emotionally and psychologically because we are parents to these
Yeah,
people. And
absolutely.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
Yeah, I feel like I speak on behalf of moms who feel unseen, unheard, and unappreciated, especially by the children they gave everything to, right?
Mhm.
And my podcast, this started as a podcast. I never wanted to be in the front of the camera. I never saw myself as a content creator. I really don't like attention. I like being behind the scenes, but truly everything that I've gone through, a lot of times you're going through stuff and you're like, most High, why am I going through all of this? Like, why am I suffering? I feel like I'm the only person, only mom that's dealing with this. And I
Mhm.
realize it's for a time such as this. And I speak not only for the women that follow me on my platform, but I speak for my ancestors who didn't have a voice. So
Mhm. And that's because you said something right there. It is through the generational line as well that we get some of our experience in parenting, right?
yeah.
So if
Oh
mom
yeah.
didn't speak up, if you saw mom's sister and auntie and grandma didn't really say anything, and we're melanated women, and I'm not sure where you're from, but I know I'm inner city Baltimore, and
Mhm.
you see the relationships of the mother and things of that nature, and sadly enough, somebody who mama had to bail him out of jail and he was still disrespectful.
I'm
Who
somebody.
right. Like,
Hmm.
but took, like you said, put the house up on for sale so they could get him out, and he
I'm
was still
somebody.
the mother who daughter is out there doing whatever she want to do, come in and want to cuss her out and in her house, you know what I'm saying? And
I'm
so,
somebody.
and we seen that in somebody's
Hmm.
house. And
Yeah, for
so,
sure.
we get, from, like I said, from a therapeutic perspective, we get so um emotionally attached that
Hmm.
once we get emotionally attached, we don't see truth. We see fear,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? And you
Hmm.
just said something really impactful. You said you didn't want to be judged.
Hmm.
So again, this is unboxed. I'm always being unboxed.
Hmm.
I know that when my daughter and I started having a challenged relationship, and we're gonna go into this because it's really more to it. But when we started going into a challenged relationship, I was just like, oh my God, I never said anything negative about my children. I would give facts, like if something
Yeah.
happened. but I would not speak negative on their characters, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they were very productive. There are very productive children and things of that nature. So people just almost pedestal them, like, you're a great mom. They do great things. Like, it must be awesome. And in the background, I'm crying.
Mm-hmm.
I'm figuratively dying because
Yeah.
what people see in my parenting and in my children, they don't know the backstory and what I go through behind closed doors.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to be judged if I start opening up, because like I said, I'm transparent. One of the reasons was because if I say anything bad about my children, it may reflect on me as a mom. And I'm like, doing my very best as a mom. Do you think that may be some of the reasons why moms and women are not speaking up about what they're going through, because they feel like their children's behavior, or somebody may look at them and go, you know what, well, maybe it's your parenting.
I think that's the main reason a lot of women stay silent. And a lot of them are suffering in silence. To make a correction, I didn't care about being judged. I've been very open and honest. What I said is I knew that my peers were judging me, right? But I've never shied away from conversations. Like you said, I would never disparage the character of my children, but I've always been very honest and upfront about what I was dealing with, which was not pleasant. Similar to the examples that you gave, like I said, that's why I kept saying I am somebody. I put my home up to make sure my younger son didn't go to prison or to bail him out of jail. I've been cursed out in my own home after I've done all of that. So all the things that you said, with the exception of having a daughter doing it, all of those things that you mentioned in those examples, I have been through. My husband and I have been through, and we've experienced that with my younger son, unfortunately, in our home, with the disrespect, getting cursed out, bailing him out, still being disrespected. So we've been through that. But to answer your question, I do believe that a lot of women, most women, stay silent because they don't want to be judged. And it's very interesting that me opening up this platform has made women become so forthcoming.
Gosh, yes.
And the number of comments that I get with people sharing their experiences, and I get not hundreds of thousands, but I get hundreds of direct messages and emails from women all the time that are opening up and sharing those experiences, or saying, thank you for me being able to speak something, or thank you for saying this. You summed up my exact experience as if you were living it. And I'm like, yeah, because I have. And to your point in regards to the people that do come in and say, you're not a therapist, and they question my credentials, I don't need to be a therapist. I have 29 and 34 years of experience that far exceeds most therapists. I can't speak for you, but most therapists that are on the scene right now that are creating these narratives that are causing this division. And I'm not saying all therapists, I'm saying a lot of therapists. I have far more experience than them. So when they ask me for my credentials, I ask them to show me their adult kids.
I know that's listen, hunty baby, say that, right? And so coming in, right, and like I said, allowing me, like when I heard your first one, and I can't remember exactly what that first one was, but I know that it was late at night. I was in my thoughts and reflecting on my things, and I hear this lady saying, come here, pull it in for a minute. And I came in because I'm like, like, bring
it on in.
What do you say? And when you started talking, it was like, oh my gosh, does she know me? And the crazy thing about this is I was almost scared to push like.
Wow.
I'll tell you why. Because I knew that once I pushed like, I'm going to start having to face some stuff.
Yeah, you're going to have to acknowledge what was really going on.
And the crazy thing about it is, you tied in so much stuff, because it's like in allowing the person that you gave life to now dictate your life is so unscaled and out of order. And I knew that. But this is where I'm getting ready to go with this one. Because of lack of support, enough people around to validate what you're going through with that, right? And not to say that I don't have friends, because I have friends, sis, who would tell me things like, girl, I really want to check your children, because you are too good a mother for you to be receiving that. And when they because I know how you, and I started having to say, no, wait a minute. No, I'm not going
Yeah.
to let you disrespect my child. But
Yeah.
to recognize that and you to acknowledge that you just don't know you became a support system for me to
Mhm.
feel empowered. And that's something that you give. Feel
Wow. Thank you.
empowered to say, wait, let me
Mhm.
take back my emotional, psychological, and even physical freedom.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
let me add this, right? I was doing really good with navigating my not taking no buzz from my adult kids, right?
Mhm.
My son passed away at 28.
Sorry. So sorry.
So it put me back. Thank you. It put me back in that place where, oh, I don't want to lose a kid.
Mhm.
Oh, I laid one. He's eternally sleeping. I don't want
Mhm.
another one to go out of here, and this, that, and another, right? And
Mhm.
after a minute, right? And this is almost like my Diana Ross coming out story, right? I'm coming out. I'm like, wait, if I laid him to eternal rest, why
Yeah.
would my remaining ones have to lay me to rest?
Now, so I was just about to say it could have been you.
Hmm. Hmm.
Not could have been. I apologize for saying that. Not could have been. That's not what I mean. But after that, laying your son to rest. If you continue on that journey to pacify, to enable, to allow these behaviors towards you just for the fact that you don't want to lose them, not in the physical sense, but in the attachment sense, right? Or that emotional sense, you are jeopardizing your own life and your own well-being. And I don't think we pay attention enough to our mental well-being as moms.
And I want to speak to, you're absolutely right. And I want to speak to coming from a therapist profession and what I give. And like you said, no, I got some experience, right? And that's what makes
Mhm.
my sessions and things in coaching with people different because I'm not textbook. I've got
Yeah.
experience. So I'm going to give
Yep.
you the real, the rough and the raw, right?
Hmm.
But to your statement about the therapist, because you put that one out there, and that's so much needed because what
Hmm.
we're dealing with society is we are helping to develop emotionally incompetent individuals. So we're
Absolutely.
pacifying behaviors and giving
Hmm.
a psychological terminology to it.
Hmm.
And so the crazy thing about it is because I want to talk to that, as you know, like I said, with providing therapeutic services, another example, we lived in California, and when my teenage daughter, she was a teenager at the time, we went to a therapist, and it's very important that the therapy that we receive,
Hmm.
we vet the people. So what our insurance paid for was an Armenian young woman without kids.
Mm.
And it became a battle because in her thinking she was empowering my child, she was
Right.
vision in my home. But
Hmm.
emotionally,
Hmm.
you didn't understand what was going on, and you were only giving what the textbook said. And baby, everything ain't textbook case. It's a
That part.
basis, but
Hmm.
it's not the everybody goes under this umbrella and acts in.
Absolutely.
There comes with
Hmm.
history, there comes with
Yeah.
environment, there comes with the culture, it comes with all of that. So can you speak to that? And listen, baby, open forum. Can you speak to if what have you found, or what you've come to knowledge of with what some of these therapists are doing to hinder the
Oof.
parent-child relationship and not help it?
You know, everything to a certain degree. So this is the thing, and I think this is where people really lost their mind. My post, I said, you're weaponizing therapy. You're going to therapy to heal, allegedly, right? That's what you're supposed to be going there for. But what a lot of these adult children and a lot of people are doing, they're coming out of that therapy and they're weaponizing that therapy against the people closest to
Mhm,
them.
mhm,
It could be weaponized, and majority of the time, as we see over all these social media platforms, it's the moms. The
mhm,
moms right now are the target of all of this negative energy. Every
mhm.
mom is a narcissist. Every mom is toxic. Every mom is abusive. Emotionally immature is the new thing that's coming up now. I know it's not new, but it's circling around the algorithm. The emotionally immature mom, you need to be accountable. Half the times, these women don't even know what they need to be accountable for, or they have already said, I apologize or forgive me for whatever it is. That's if they even have an opportunity to even discuss it with their child, because a lot of the children are ghosting them the same way they ghost friends.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what's happening is these
Also because they don't hold a certain respect. And I'm a person that dismiss titles, right? You go with character. For me, you go with character. Like the title, and I say that because I had a poor relationship with my mother. And it was when I released her from the title of mother, because what I saw with that title came characteristics like
Absolutely.
supporting, and she was none of those things. So
Yeah,
wait, I have to see her for the person. But I think what
absolutely.
happens is because we are doing some things, like you said, with maybe not looking at the title, you think, okay, I'm grown now, they're grown, but you forget that one factor. The only reason you are grown is because you were able to get here in life,
Mhm.
altogether. So no,
Mhm.
I always say this: you're not my equal. I
Mhm.
respect you and you respect me, but you're not my equal.
No, there's a hierarchy that's been lost,
Yeah.
right? There's a hierarchy in parenting that's been lost, and I blame it a lot on every generation thinks they're going to parent better than the last generation.
Mhm.
I'm Gen X. I'm 52 years old. I thought that I was going to parent better than my mom. Therefore, I wasn't going to beat my children like me, because I was beat with belts, hangers, switches, slapped in the mouth,
Oh,
embarrassed in peers,
oh yeah.
and some other things that I won't even get into. That's very demeaning,
Mhm.
physically. But nonetheless, I stopped seeing my mom as my mom and I started to see her as an individual. And same thing for my father, who was a drug addict and died in prison in 2014. And I laid him to rest, even though we were estranged for
Mhm.
many, many years. And I didn't owe him that. But when I started to unpack the layers of who they were as individuals, I was able to move on and I was able to heal on my own, not contingent
Mhm.
upon them asking or begging for forgiveness,
Mhm.
not contingent upon them being accountable for anything. I know I will never get that and I'm not expecting that, but that's what
You haven't
true
sent me
healing
the apology.
that's what true healing looks like. And
Mhm.
I think when it comes to therapy and what social media is pushing, they're not pushing conflict resolution. They're
No,
pushing these children to build walls instead of build bridges.
but I think that that's strategically done, and I'm gonna tell you why.
I agree.
Because in order for the system to do what it does, it has to
Mhm.
break the hierarchy or anything that is going to be able to be a protector for the
Mhm.
individual. So once you separate that, you have
Mhm.
emotionally immature individuals, like you
Very
said,
much.
the lack of conflict resolution. So now we're just going to base everything on feeling. And
Yeah,
we all know, for an emotionally underdeveloped individual, especially, those feelings change all the time.
absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think that, like you said, we are giving too much power. But I've also seen this. Here's a twist. I've also seen that the young adult, between the ages of about 25 and 35, maybe, they
Mhm.
are doing better financially than their parents, which then give them this kind of, oh, well, I remember back in the day, if it was that kind of household, you
Mhm.
ain't grown, so you can live on your own and you got you this, that, and another. And now that they're
Mhm.
like, I own this company, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm grown. And
Mm.
that may be a factor as well, to believe or to make them believe that they are either that their parents are inferior, or that
Mhm.
they can come a certain way with their parents, because now I'm doing what you told me to do. I'm taking care of myself. So now I'm grown. So now I no longer can remember that when I didn't take care of myself, you took care of me.
That's a good point, but I think there's so far and few between that those that are financially stable. You know how many of these moms come in my comments and tell me their kids are in their 30s and 40s and still living at home?
Oh,
They ain't got no damn money. They broke. That's why they back home. But then they come home because now they feel like because they are an adult,
mhm.
even living in their homes, these people are dealing with the uttermost disrespect and dishonor from these children. They're saying, a lot of them are saying, when their kids go to college, some of the teachers in college or people that they're connecting with, like there's so many different factors that I don't think we will ever unpack the layers 100% as to why this is happening. But it is a trend. I don't care what anybody else says, because if it were not a trend, then you wouldn't see all
Okay.
the same words being regurgitated within their echo chambers.
You know what? Because I had some notes, but I ain't gonna take it. What you just said, and revelation light bulb, you're absolutely right. Like, I didn't even put the two together till just, it really is a trend.
a
It
trend
is a
that we
trend.
have gotten, that these children have just fallen into, excuse me, and it's so sad because they don't understand the disconnect. I think it was you that said something about the resentment piece, right? Was it? Did you
Mhm.
say something I like I said, my oldest son who passed away. I remember he and I having a conversation, and he was like, "I resent you," and I was like, "Whoa, what? What? You resent me?" Like, okay,
That's a hard word.
oh my gosh, wait, yes,
Mhm.
absolutely. And we're going to talk about that because we're going to talk about types of abuse, and
Yeah,
emotional abuse is definitely one,
absolutely.
right? And
Mhm.
so he said, I resent you. And I was like, resent me for what? And he was
Mhm.
like, because listen to this. He said, because you always show up. You always showing up for me. And I was like, wait, that's oxymoronic. What do you mean you resent me because I show up? And he was like,
Mhm.
every time I'm in trouble, you show up and this, that, and other. He was like, and I think it was either you or something I heard, and it finally just gave me this relief because it said children sometimes, adult children resent their mothers, not dads,
Mhm.
their
Mhm.
mothers for
Mhm.
showing, for
For
taking care
staying.
of them. But it really is because they're angry at the absent parent that wasn't there.
So that would be me that said that. So maybe that's what you saw first.
Listen, I
I
told you all.
specifically said, I specifically said last year, and I'm not gonna say specifically because I got menopause and it probably won't be
Child,
specific.
that's a whole
However,
nother too.
however, I did say that stop abusing and disrespecting the parent that stayed.
Mm.
And you don't have that energy for the person that left.
Mhm.
Because moms take on the brunt of all the abuse. We take on all the abuse because you're really mad because your daddy left you, but you're not realizing he didn't just leave you, but he left her as well.
Mhm.
In a lot of cases, he left you, he left the mom with that 50% responsibility that he is also responsible for having. And I did not expect so many people to be triggered by that statement, by me
Oh,
saying,
honey.
stop abusing and disrespecting the parent that stayed. And that's what opened Pandora's box as far as, well, my mom was abusive. And it doesn't matter if you stay, if you're the one that's causing me trauma. And I was just like,
And then we,
whoa.
but what we did is we made not getting your favorite bowl of Lucky Charms trauma, though.
That's trauma. Everything is trauma. Let me see. If you made them clean up, do chores, you were oppressor. You made them a servant. Um, I hear some of the craziest things, and sometimes I'm just like, I know y'all lying. I know this is not real life. I know you telling me, ma'am, that your son said that you abused him because you circumcised him, and that is genital mutilation. I
No, and
know.
you know what? He just mad because he wanted some more inches and it just ain't there. Let's just go there. Okay,
Be mad with yourself, baby, because that's not your mother's fault. But I'm just like, I know y'all are kidding me right now. Like, some of the things that I hear are absolutely insane as to why these children are now saying they have this trauma and their parents are toxic. And I'm just like, are y'all serious?
Mhm. No, and that's psychological abuse, right? So again,
Definitely.
my beautiful daughter, right?
Hmm.
She was going through something and she said that she had asked her friend to come and show up for her. And I'm gonna tell you, this is wild, right? Because ooh. So I said, well, why didn't you ask me to come? I'm not even that far away from you. Again, that toxic. I'm always there for you,
Mhm.
And she said, and we let's talk about it. She said, well, I'm still trying to get over some things that I had to endure at your hands when I was growing up. So, I mean, um, now you're the mother that I need you to be, but you wasn't the mother I needed you to be back then.
Oh, wow.
And my first thought, but I operate in self control at least
Hmm.
92% of the time.
Hmm.
My first thought was, well, who was to say that you was the child that I wanted you to be?
That part. And I say that quite often, but
But,
continue.
but my response was, wow. Well, I
Mhm.
thank you for recognizing the growth in me to see that I've done the work to be a better person.
You
That
didn't ask her what she meant?
I'm be truthful, at the time I didn't care. I really, because
Okay, because I'm like, yeah, what we're not gonna do is that.
I'm telling you, I was on my healing journey, so I don't really
Mhm.
even want to get ready to pour water in that and feed it, right?
Got
But
it.
but the thing about it is, I know that constantly she had told me, as she was growing up, two things: one, that I was emotionally disconnected, And
Mm-hmm.
I understand what she meant by that. And I understand that that's what it looked like. But
Mm-hmm.
what happens is because I had my own trauma, that my trauma response was I was so overloaded and stimulated with so many feelings that I had
Mm-hmm.
to kind of shut them down in order for me to navigate being able to respond the right way. So
And
it
also not to bleed on them to a certain degree, even
that
if it
was
may have been a little trickle of blood here and there, but you didn't get the full bleed on you.
which
Because
takes me
I was tying the tourniquet up to bond, and try to pause my trauma and keep it from bleeding on you. Yes, you may have felt a little bit of it.
Mhm.
However, because I was trying to bottle it up and put a tourniquet on it to stop my bleeding so it wouldn't trickle down on you. Yeah, you may have felt a little bit, but
Mhm.
like you said, that disconnect is sometimes. What about my mom was in survival mode the whole time?
And listen, it's funny you said that because the other in conversation with her, the other thing, listen here, and again, it's that absent parent, and like you said, making it hard for the parent to stay.
Yeah.
There was the other statement that, I grew up sheltered. And I said, well, that's the way you saw it. You grew up sheltered. I say you grew up protected.
That
You had a
part.
mother who was sexually abused, molested, and incest for 10 years of her life, from 6 to
Right.
16. Can you give me any of those stories? So
Yeah.
I'm like, so I understand what you're saying, but the things that happened to me, again,
Mhm.
I keep it 100. Like you said, I am the apologetic parent, but to a
Mhm.
fault, right? I know
Yeah.
that a lot of times in my parenting, I parented out of love, but also out of fear. And that
Absolutely.
fear, being a primary emotion, came out as a secondary emotion, which looked like,
Mhm.
right?
And
So,
codependency too. I think we parent from a place of codependency sometimes, and I think we parent from a place of abandonment.
yeah.
Sometimes if we experience abandonment, like myself, like you said, she looked at it as shelter. You looked at it as protection, and you were protecting her because, like you said, she can't share any of those stories that you experienced for 10 years. And then I'm always curious when a mom does open up to her child about her trauma, they sit there with this blank stare in their face as if it's not happening or if it does not matter, or in a way to just respond to try to one up your trauma, knowing they can never one up some of our trauma.
But you said a word, and I don't want to put this on just my daughter because I have
No,
had
we're
some
not doing that.
experience of my sons, right?
Hmm.
Even at this moment, being estranged from my son, but at least I got a letter that says I love you, and
Hmm.
yeah, one day we'll connect. Oh, okay, but
Okay.
yeah, okay, because hey, right? But but the thing with like my daughter, I remember she and I going to therapy. She had to be about 16, and again, we have to understand developmentally where we are.
Hmm.
I finally let her read my book. Oh, wow, the one that's behind me. It's called
Hmm.
Silent Screams, and it's a book about overcoming sexual abuse, right? And tell my story and everything. And I didn't let her read it till about that time.
Yeah.
And because I'm like, you can't. She's like, everybody's buying your book and they reading it, but I can't. I'm like, you're not ready. But what you
Hmm.
said was very key because after I let her read the book, it's almost like she had to one up me and what I went through and now make it her challenges or her issues. And I'm like, these are choices that you're making. I didn't have the choice. They happened to me. You're actually,
They center their trauma around our trauma.
yeah, yeah. And that's some crazy stuff because it's
No,
just
it's
like,
some selfish stuff.
yeah, I would
It's
have to
selfish and it's self-centered, and you lack self-awareness because if I protected you and you didn't have these experiences, how dare you try to center your experience around my trauma of being sexually abused for 10 years?
Mhm,
And
mhm.
I made reference to that before on clips as well. Stop centering your trauma, your fake trauma, a lot of times. And like you said, it's things that you have created for yourself. And I'm not saying or dismissing that people have not gone through the same things that we have. What I am saying is don't center yourself around the trauma that your parents have experienced. Because a lot of times we don't share. You sharing that book was that moment for her to understand you.
Mhm, mhm. But
They
wait,
never do that.
go here, right? So I'm gonna put her out there, not gonna give her name, but so a very dear person to me wrote her children letters
Mm,
explaining things that she had gone through. And
okay.
as a thing, it was like, well, why would you write me this letter? Because now I have to accept what happened, and I've got to change my perception and my mind, my thought about what I wanted to think about you or why I wanted to be angry at you. You've kind of just you kind of just
You mean you need to have some empathy and some grace?
ooh, okay.
Because that's lacking.
I don't know that our young adults at this
They
moment
don't.
have those.
They don't. They don't. There's no way you could have empathy and grace and still navigate the way that some of them are navigating.
Hmm.
There's no way. Because had my mother wrote a letter to me, my mother has bits and pieces. Of course, she's the boomer generation. They come from the silent generation. They're not really talkers. But she shared, may here or there a couple of things. And I always have empathy for my mom
Mhm.
and her experiences and the secrets that she's kept. You know what I'm saying? Or had to keep, or the things she's just finding out at 70 plus years old about herself and her life or family.
Mhm.
But our children lack grace and they lack empathy. You know why? Because we have given them so much and so much of our time, attention, and our love. We have made them this way. So it's our fault.
I say that all the time, and I want you to continue, please. But like you said, I tell my story, and if anybody else tells the story, baby, you just coming late, Johnny come lately. But I tell my story, and I say we talk about a lot of these narcissists, men that we're involved in, or even narcissist females, and I'm like, well, where do they come from? They come from narcissist parents. And I raised my hand and I said, you know what? To a degree, I raised little narcissists. I did because I overshowered them and I gave them and I wanted to protect them and I did all this stuff. This
But
brand
you weren't doing that with intention,
I
though.
was not
Narcissists do that type of stuff with an intention of something being returned to them.
right, right. But what
So
I'm
no.
saying is, I created this this personality or character that this person now assumes, and this is what that generation is kind of dealing with. They assume that they are privileged and entitled to. And I
That's
was like,
that's a lot of it.
I'm going to take my ownership, but like I said, I'm going to take my ownership to a fault. What you're not going to do is continuously emotionally manipulate me into believing that the way I parented you was horrible. The way I parented you was the way I did with the cards that I was dealt. And through all of the domestic violence and the sexual abuse and the homelessness and, working 2-3 jobs, cussing people out on my job because I'm like, you know what, if you got to fire me, you got to fire me. But I'm going to my son's football game. If you dock my pay because my daughter needs me to be at her little recital at this, that, and another. Like, y'all don't understand the arrows that are in our back and the blood that we're shedding because one little toothpick of a prick hit you and you felt that pain. Like, no, and I say this and tell me what you feel about this. I don't feel as a parent we should even tell our children or we should share, oh, I sacrificed. I just think that psychologically we didn't sacrifice. We chose. I chose to have you. So there were some things that I needed to do, but I didn't sacrifice from that perspective. But I did sacrifice from the perspective that you don't understand what I was holding back off of you in order for you to get to these awesome places that you are and the things that you do. And
No, so that is the sacrifice. No, you didn't sacrifice to be a mother. Yes, you're right. We chose to be a mother because we could have chosen something else. So that's to the ones that say, I didn't ask to be here. Or some of us didn't ask to be mothers. But when we became mothers, we took it seriously. We took that job. We took that title seriously. So when I say we have sacrificed a lot, I'm not saying sacrifice as in sacrifice to have children. I'm talking about the sacrifices that you made to make sure that they didn't go without, that they were safe, that they did have a meal every single time, even if you didn't eat. Sacrifices like you didn't get to go to college. You had to do that later in life because you had to put that to the back. That is a sacrifice. When you have to put your dreams and your goals on hold because you need to push your children forward. That is the sacrifice. So when you hear, even if you've ever heard me say that, that is what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the basics that we do on a regular basis. I'm not talking about the sacrifice of becoming a mother. I'm talking about the silent servitude and the sacrifices that we make every single solitary day to make sure they're good while we push our trauma That's a sacrifice. You
Mhm.
pushing your trauma down to make sure they don't feel it or experience it. A sacrifice again is you don't get to pursue your goals, your dreams, all of the things that you may have had planned in life or had to put it to the side because you were being a mom. You know what I'm saying? Like
But
you may have
like you
gone
said, as a choice.
as a choice. Like I got my degree afterwards because I was a teenage
Uh,
mom at
I was doing
17
a 16-year
because,
plan. I
you
took
know,
all 3 of
so
my kids to college with me, baby.
so this is what I'm saying. I was 17 years old when I had my older son. I had to cancel all of my college applications, college dorm, all of those things that I was planning before I got pregnant and maintain that so I can take care of my son. His father wasn't trying to do it. He went off and lived his life, went to college, played football, did all the things that he wanted to do, but I had to sacrifice
Mhm.
not going to college like I should have been going to be a mom. And then I had to do it later on in life. Now I have 2 children. Now I am divorced. Now I am remarried. I am working in corporate and I'm an entrepreneur as well and a new wife. So that is a sacrifice. And I don't care what anybody says as it relates to that.
So I'm gonna give a couple scenarios, right? To
Hmm.
the mom, because you just said newly married, right? To the
Hmm.
mom who's like, I want to have a relationship, but I'm kind of feeling like I have to choose between my child or my children and me actually having to have a relationship. And even though they're 20, 30, or whatever the case may be, I
No,
still
ma'am.
don't want to upset the cart with them because
No.
maybe talk to her.
No, ma'am. Sis, it's your life. It's your life because those 20, 30 years old, even if they're with you, they're going to go and live their lives. They're going to live their lives. When we wrap our entire being and our entire identity up into our children, and then they leave us, that's why so many of these women are suffering right now with this estrangement because a lot of their children have gotten married and now their spouses have become the first priority and they no longer have that tight connection that they have. They are struggling with that. So to that woman who wants to start dating or may have somebody that she's hiding in the background because she doesn't want to upset her kids, live your life.
Yeah. And
Live your life.
that is an impactful statement, honestly, because we're given one life,
Mhm.
ours, uniquely. And we have to navigate whatever those things are or those people who will hinder us from navigating living. There's a scripture that in the Bible, it's John 10:10 that said that Jesus came to give us life and it in abundance. And
Mhm.
if you're not living an abundant life, then you're doing yourself a huge disservice. And in
Absolutely.
doing so, learning to be and to have self-care and being
Mhm.
selfless is saying that I'm going to, at the highest, take
Mhm.
care of myself, not at the expense of hurting someone else, but
Mhm.
at healing myself. Um,
Absolutely.
and I made that scripture, and I want to kind of just go here as we kind of start winding down.
Mhm.
Another scripture that says, biblical scripture that says, and her children shall rise up and call her blessed, right?
Mhm.
And so when we look at what's going on right now and how demeaning and degrading and damaging the mother is feeling and going through, because after doing those things
Mhm.
that they knew best to do with
Yeah,
whatever cards they were dealt, they did the best they knew to do in that
absolutely.
situation, right? Um, what would you say even to that woman, that to not be discouraged because you know that you gave all that you had to give, and they're not calling you blessed, they calling you abusive, they're calling you
Mhm.
monstrous, they're calling you everything but that.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
share with her that it's okay.
Listen, it's okay for you to take the opportunity to reclaim your identity.
Hmm.
That's
That's
the
that.
title of my book, and I stand on that, and I named it that for a specific reason. To that woman who knows for sure that you have done it all, you have done it all, you have sacrificed it all, you have laid it all out, you have given everything to your children, do not allow them to create a false narrative to make you second guess who you were and who you are. And that's why it's time for you to shift your focus back to who you were. And a lot of women don't remember that girl anymore. So it's like, if you don't remember her, then you need to figure the new her out. So I would tell her to rest.
I like that.
Find your love for yourself. Learn to love yourself. Find your value outside of motherhood.
Mm.
And once you do that, let me tell you something. When you learn to value yourself and you learn to love yourself, and I mean not in a selfish way, but really love yourself, where you will not tolerate certain things. You're going to set boundaries, where you're not going to ignore your intuition or any of those things, that whatever it looks like loving yourself, that love can only be returned to you, even from your estranged child. And that is what I'm trying to teach moms, to be empowered. And it doesn't mean that you're closing the door and you don't love your child. It just means you're learning to love yourself even more.
And that's powerful. That's powerful, because like you said, you can't even love somebody else until you love you. And you have to then define what love looks like and what love is for you.
And what it feels like.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so true. And reclaiming your identity. So I know that a lot of people can find you on IG, because that's where I found you. But please tell us, because I think that a lot of us moms need to go ahead and order that book and start loving ourselves by doing that, right?
Yeah.
In fact, I think I want to offer something to a mom who listens to this, that I would actually purchase that book for her, to be
nice.
Caring for herself. I mean, I gotta get my copy. But I think I want to offer that, because if it's one thing I want to do, I mean, it's many, but in my helping other people, I definitely, a friend of mine always says, she says, I'm not my sister's keeper, I am my sister.
Yeah.
So I am my sister. I want to be able to bless somebody with that book as well. So let us know how we can go ahead and get it, and get in touch with you and all that good stuff.
Yeah, you can get in contact with me on all my social media handles. They're the same thing. It's up on the screen, Mom's True Tea. I'm on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and of course, Instagram as well.
They get mad at you on TikTok.
yeah, on TikTok as well. You know, listen, I tussle with them. I stand on what I stand on. And it's not from a perspective of thinking moms are all right, because I know that we're not all right. But I know there's some good moms, and I know these women are fighting for their lives when it comes to the love that they have for their children and the estrangement that's breaking them. You're not a bad parent when you're doing that, right? But back to your statement, as far as, again, my social media handles are Mom's True Tea, as shown on the screen, and you can grab my book on my website, which is also momstruetea.com, or you can grab it on Amazon if you're a Prime member and you want to get it right away. But if you don't want to deal with Amazon, that's perfectly fine. You can grab the ebook and the paperback book on my website as well.
Absolutely. Again, you know what? I cannot thank you enough for gracing the Being Unboxed platform.
No, thank you.
It's so needed. You are the voice that's crying in the wilderness and speaking to those who are either muted or not as loud with what they need to say and express. I just speak so much empowerment in you to continue, as I know you will.
Thank you.
This platform and many others give you that opportunity to share your words, share your book, share your story, share your expertise. Yes, I see, right? Because
thank you.
The letters behind your name I like your spelling. The letters behind your name that gives you the authority to speak on this is MUM, right?
Yes. So, yes. It's intentional. It was very intentional.
So I want to thank you.
Thank you, Renee.
Absolutely. I love the connection. I know, we've done this, but we're going to have to get together. And
I would love that. Yes. Anytime. Definitely anytime. Thank you for having me.
you have become a part of the Unboxed family, baby.
Thank you.
So look, I was gonna say thank you so much. All right, guys, listen. So y'all heard it. Y'all know where y'all can find her. She drops so much tea on us, baby, that nobody listening to this podcast should be thirsty. Okay. So we are going to get out of here. We have been unboxed. I thank you for the time that you shared with us. And I thank you for even logging on and coming on to the D.O.D network, where this is the best self, best life, best radio. And you better say that. Peace.
Okay, I love that.
You have been listening to Being Unboxed on the D.O.D Radio Network. Best self, best life, best radio.